Hi everyone, it's Renee with Delaney Jane Cards. Welcome back to my channel. I have a 5-card 1-kit video for you featuring the Create and Inkspire October 2020 kit. There are lots of fun goodies in here. I'm going to go through them really quick. I will have a timestamp in case you want to skip the unboxing, but it doesn't take very long. There are 2 pieces of Nina Solar White 80-pound cardstock and 1 piece of craft cardstock in here. If you have wanted to try the Nina for coloring, it's in there, so give it a shot before you buy it. Then there's a piece of Inkadinkado masking paper. It has the blue on the background, and that's what you peel off, and it's just like a big old sticker. There's 4 pieces of bronzed foil cardstock by Kaisercraft, and they are super pretty. Look at those. Oh my goodness. And then there are 4 pieces of 6x6 autumn maple pearlescent cardstock by Tonic. And then let's see, these metallic rub-on paint palette. I wouldn't call it a paint palette because you can't really paint with it, but you can do some fun things, and I do use it in a few fun ways. And then there's also a stamp set that Courtney designed. This is a giant stamp set. It is 6 by 8. It is super big, and these images they definitely can fill a card. And the new slimline cards, these will definitely help you fill up one of those, no problem. Lots of fun things on there, leaves and images, and grapes, cornucopia, and super fun. Also, she changed packaging. See, here's the old white and then the new like aqua color. Let me know if you like the new color. And then there is a layering stencil. Go Courtney. This stencil here is just the like the negatives of the leaves, and then the other one is like all the veining and everything. Super neat idea, super fun. I just put that piece of cardstock behind it so you can kind of see through, but it matches up really easy, and there's these like little dots on it. It's very fun. Oh, also, can't miss the sweet treat. This month it is a little pack of fruit snacks, and it says, fun fact, fruit snacks were developed in the 70s and were used by backpackers and hikers as a high energy snack, but not necessarily a healthy one. Also, fun fact, mine are gone. I hate them. So I am going to jump right into the cards. I will show you bits and pieces of each one. Probably not. Well, I'll try to show you the whole card for each one. I know this is a longer video, but I really wanted to showcase this kit. And I really tried to stick to the kit. I did pull a few things from previous kits, or, like stash items. So here I'm stamping the pumpkin and these leaves in a corn in some Versamark ink, or VersaFine Onyx Black ink. And then I'm going to heat emboss them with Gina K. Brown embossing powder. You can emboss with this stuff. I just didn't want quite the super harsh black outline. So I did emboss them in brown. I also did use my anti-static powder bag on the piece of cardstock before, and this is the Nina cardstock that came in the kit. I tried, like I said, tried to stick to the kit as much as I possibly could. So here I am going to color with these luster rub-ons, and I just have these little blending brushes. They're makeup brushes. I am lying to you. They are makeup brushes from the Dollar Tree. They're $1. But I have a little tiny one, and I am going to make orange because there isn't really an orange in here. There's a gold and a red and a yellow, and well, their powers combined, we get orange. So I am coloring the pumpkin orange, and I think I did a pretty good job of making orange. I think I mastered orange. So I did that, and then I just rubbed it off on a microfiber cloth. I have a bajillion of these laying around my house, and well, that's a good use for them. For the corn, I clearly colored it yellow because corn should be yellow, I think. I don't know. There's other colors, but yellow's good. And then I colored up the leaves. I did a couple of different colors on them because in the fall the leaves change color, and well, they're changing. So here I used a yellow and red, and then I used yellow and green, and then I went back to the corn and colored the parts of the corn that are green and parts of the pumpkin that are green. Anyway, we're all colored. Everything's colored, and it was super fast. So then I took the stencil and put it on this piece of the Tonic cardstock that came in the kit. And it's got a kind of a shimmery finish on it, which is really neat. I just used some removable Scotch tape to hold it down, and then I kind of pinch through the stencil and put tape to tape Just kind of holds everything in place. So here I used the white kind of tone that's in there. It's like a frosted color. I used that to kind of lighten all of the leaves. And then I went through and I added gold to some of them, and I'm going to add some yellow. And this is going to be very, very subtle on this piece of like metallic cardstock. What is this stuff called? It's called pearlescent cardstock, autumn maple pearlescent cardstock by Tonic, and there's like several. I think there's 4 colors. They're all stunning, by the way. Like, I might need this pack of paper. I hope Courtney has it in stock because I might be ordering it. Anyway, super pretty. Could have left it just like this, but this stencil is this layering stencil, and I thought, well, let's layer with it. So I still had my pieces of tape stuck on my paper, so now I'm going to go through with this black, and I clearly thought it was brown, but it's black anyway. It doesn't really matter all that much, but I did just kind of rub over the whole stencil. Now, before we get too far, I will tell you that I did leave this sit on my stencil. I washed it off here, and later on I did like leave it sit on my stencil a little bit, and it did stain my stencil, which is whatever. It's a stencil. But if you're really worried about that, immediately wipe it off, and it still might stain. They're kind of waxy. So I fussy cut all my pieces. I did heat emboss the word thanks in that same same brown embossing powder on some of the gold version of this pattern or this cardstock that I used. And I fussy cut that out. Now I'm just going to make a little like scene here in the middle. Some stuff is popped up, some stuff is adhered directly to the background. The way that these waxy, luster, creamy, they're really cool. I need to play with them more, but they're very soft when you use them. Not like soft as in texture, soft as in color. This is a very soft card. The background is soft. The images have a real soft feel to them, even though they have, nice bold lines. And it just is a really unique thing. I've actually never seen these they're waxes kind of. Never seen them. I tried a few things that I'm not going to show you here, but I did try mixing it with water because I was like, I wonder if I could splatter, because I wanted to splatter on one of my cards. You can't. It does not mix with water. It actually kind of hardens up like wax would when you mix it with water. So that definitely wasn't the thing. I do use it a little bit differently later. Oh, I also stamped this For Everything You Do on a piece of the craft cardstock, and I heat embossed that in brown. So here is card number 2, and I made pumpkins, like a line of pumpkins. This is where I really pulled in that masking paper from Inkadinkado. I've never used this masking paper before. I will say it's very sticky. I did learn that I needed to stick it to something first before I stuck it to my paper. But here I am masking and stamping, and then masking, the next one, and then stamping and masking. And I am going to do a line of 5 pumpkins across my page. The very first one I did was the center one. So after I take all my masking paper off, it is going to be out front and center. And I thought that I would show you the process here, because sometimes masking can be confusing because you're just not sure what should be in front. But see here, once I took the mask off, you can see how it's one pumpkin in front. Now, I am not going to show you all the coloring because it would be redundant. I just stamped 5 pumpkins. 4 of them are going to be colored just like this one. So I am going to use the lines that the artist, aka Courtney Krieber, put into her drawing. That kind of determines where, the ridges are in a pumpkin. Pumpkins are round, but not round like an apple or even a tomato. They're round, but they have these valleys and hills. So you're going to see here that I colored the whole thing with my lightest color. With my mid-tone, I'm going to go in and I'm going to draw in the lines. And then I'm going to go in with my darkest, and I'm going to add the darker tone where the shadow needs to be the deepest. I will later go in and add a fourth color just to really deepen the shadows. I'm not sure if I have that on because I did all the coloring first before I went back and did that. But I didn't pull that darkest color all the way through those valleys because a pumpkin is round both ways. You have these rounded hills and valleys, and then the pumpkin itself is round. So the center is going to be lighter than all the edges. So here, ta-da, all four of the orange pumpkins are colored. For the center pumpkin, I wanted to color it blue, aqua, teal kind of color. If you have noticed, blue pumpkins, teal pumpkins, aqua pumpkins are kind of a thing at Halloween for kids with special needs, kids with autism, kids that have food allergies, kids that can't just grab out of a candy bowl. It kind of, I guess, dictates that there may be something that is not food related at your home when kids are trick-or-treating. We have a teal pumpkin that we put out for our trick-or-treaters, letting them know that there is something here besides candy. So we have non-food items. Anyway, that's where this is. So if you haven't heard of that, well, congratulations. Today you heard about it. So here I'm doing basically the same thing. I went through the pumpkin. I put my lightest color over the entire thing. And I'm actually going to work out and then back in because I didn't grab a traditional blending combination for this aqua color. I wanted to kind of get a custom color, and that's one wonderful thing about Copics is you can do that, get a custom color. Oh, I do think that I've already added the deeper tone to the pumpkins, which was YR27, I believe, to the orange ones, just to get that deeper tone, but I think I can kind of see it there. Anyway, you can really see with this pumpkin out in front how I'm kind of coloring it with these like U's and M's, so that the part that's in the center of the pumpkin and that's at the highest part of these hills, the ridges that are in the pumpkin, that they would be the lightest. And I think that I get the most realistic look for a pumpkin when I color it that way. I've seen pumpkins colored all sorts of ways. However you color your pumpkin is perfect. So there we go. That's the blue pumpkin, and I think he looks pretty fantastic. I say so myself. Do you like this kind of coloring here where I just show a little bit, or are you like, I'm all in, show me all the coloring? Because I like both. I'm very much like all the coloring person. So here is I just did the stems green, and then I thought about it afterwards, and I was like, they would probably be brown because that's when you know pumpkin is ready. But, whatevs. Anyway, just colored those real quick, and I didn't do much to them at all. Just did that. So there is my line of pumpkins, and I'm going to stamp the word thanks down the bottom. And this set has some buildable sentiments, which I love stamps with buildable sentiments. I think it definitely stretches the stamp set. You aren't stuck to one thing. And these words that are all made to go underneath the word thanks or with the word thanks, you can cut that all apart if you want. And they're all the same font and same size, and it makes things so much easier. You can definitely mix and match way more by having things like that where it's all the same size. So this one I thought would be kind of cool to have thanks for being you, because we talked about the blue pumpkin and what it means and all that fun stuff. And then in one of the previous kits, last month, I believe, we got, maybe the month before, we got some iridescent embossing powder in the kit. So I thought I would pull that out. Just, it's sticking with the kits. It's not this kit, but a lot of people have embossing powder. And if you've gotten the Create and Inkspire kit, you have this one. If you've been an OG and got it from the beginning, you have this embossing powder. So I just used a Versamark pen there, and I am adding some of this iridescent embossing powder to this pumpkin because it doesn't stand out enough being blue and need it to shine too. So I just used my anti-static powder tool, and I went over all of my stamping, my thanks for being you, because I did not wait for that to dry, and I didn't want it to be all shiny, but really it wouldn't have mattered. I mean, if that would have been iridescent, who really cares? It would have been awesome. So just adhered this to a piece of the gold shimmery, what was this stuff called? This was bronze foiled cardstock, and there was like 4 colors, 4 shades of that. on to the next. So card 3 is a monochromatic card. I kind of built a frame with all of the different images, and I decided that I wanted to make this monochromatic because I thought that would be really neat. I also wanted to try out an additional technique, I guess, and play with those waxes, those luster waxes a little bit more, and see if I could color over that pigment with my Copics. And I figured I could, if it ruined my nibs or if it clogged my nibs, it was okay if it did it to the dark one, because I could replace the nib, first of all. In any of my markers I could replace the nib, but I thought maybe the darker color would maybe camouflage that a little bit more. Anyway, I stamped the first part of the sentiment, which was thanks, before I decided that I was going to stamp any more sentiment, so that's why you don't see both lines of text here. And then I decided to go in with this luster rub-on stuff, and I used my little blending brush, my Dollar Tree makeup brush, and went around the edges with the gold. And I did it very subtly at first. It is very subtle even in the end, because of this monochromatic look, but there's color here. I pulled in the gold, and I will bring in red and the gray or the like silver tone to just kind of dull it down just a little bit. But you can see here, I'm using my glass mat, and you can see where the pigment itself is, or this wax is getting onto my glass mat. I'm able to just basically rub my brush over it and bring it onto my paper. I know that when we ink blend, that's kind of a plus, sometimes kind of a negative, because sometimes you don't want, you really don't want to bring additional ink to your paper. But this was really neat in how this worked. I kind of almost cleaned off the glass mat by doing this, and it didn't take much to wipe my mat off when it was done. So I did want to leave this in so I could show you. So this card is really pretty just the way it is. You could just put that on a card base and be all done. But I decided I was going to color it. So here, like I said, I wanted to see if I could color over it. I actually pulled out this E44. Is a real traditional Copic marker, like the original square one with no brush nib. It's just got this, what is that called, a bullet nib. I wanted to see how well it would go over the top. I figured if it didn't do a very good job, I don't really use the bullet nib on many things, and I thought that it would be okay if I screwed it up. But you know what? With a thin layer, just like I have here, I didn't have any trouble. None at all. And I colored all of my images with the same E40 markers. I think I went E40, E41, E43, 44, 47, and 49. That's what I used to color the entire thing. E49 I did use very sparingly, and actually I'm almost convinced that I didn't even use E40. Like, I didn't go all the way that light. I think E41 was just fine. But I colored the pumpkin the same way that I colored the other pumpkin. Kind of use those U and M shapes to kind of signify where that center of the pumpkin is and where the ridges are in the pumpkin itself. And I just went around and I colored everything. I'll show you this leaf here because it was the last one that I colored. I didn't think that you needed to watch the whole thing because it's just the same stuff over and over. Same monochromatic stuff. But you can get some really good shading and depth in a monochromatic look. I just thought it was very pretty. I also apparently forgot to show where I stamped the second line of text. It fits right in there under the thanks, and almost underlined it. So here are the 3 that we've made so far, and now on to number 4. So this one I think is my favorite. I don't know why, but I think it's my favorite. So here I'm using my stamps, and they're clearly not clean. So the one leaf is like black. It didn't stamp with this fade out ink. It stamped black. So I restamped it twice because I was like, well, I don't really want the black line. So that's why you see 3 leaves here, and I only end up using 2. And I'm going to pull out my colored pencils. And I like colored pencils on craft cardstock. I think it's stunning. But Desiree from Include a Thank You this is like her medium of choice, colored pencils. And she's amazing at it. And I thought, I'm never going to be amazing at it unless I practice. And I'm hoping, I'm crossing my fingers that Santa Claus brings me a newer set of colored pencils for Christmas. The one that I have is very, very old. It's Prismacolor pencils. They work amazing, but I have just a small set of them, and I would like to work with them more. So anyway, hint, hint, Santa Claus. That's what I would like. So I'm going to color my pumpkin orange. So far you've seen no orange. I put yellow down, and then now I'm using maroon. Yeah, no, right? But when you're coloring anything, your highlights and your lowlights are not the color of your object. They are the highlight where it shines, and they are a deep shadow. When you're coloring with your Copics, everything, the midtones is the color of your object. So here with the colored pencils, my midtones are all orange. And I struggle with my colored pencils sometimes because with Copics, I like 3 and 4 color blends, most of the time 4. With colored pencils, sometimes I'm like at 5 or 6 colored pencils to get the depth that I want. I think that has to do with me needing to practice more, but colored pencils they're kind of fun. You have to have patience. It takes longer for me anyway, because they're not my chosen medium. It takes longer to color because you have to use really, really light layers. So think of the paper like sandpaper. Everybody's kind of seen sandpaper, right? There's sand glued to a piece of paper, and there's ridges and bumps and, kind of on a larger scale. But if you rubbed a crayon over that, you know how the crayon would fill in the spaces? Paper works like that. This paper is just the nooks and crannies are smaller, but the colored pencil sticks in those nooks and crannies. So if you were to press really hard with your pencil, you would fill those spaces in, and then you couldn't add any more color on top of it. There's no other tooth, no other sandpaper to grab the pigment. So you have to work in really, really small layers, really light layers. And I think some of it for me is hesitation as well, because I'm nervous that I'm going to fill up all those little nooks and crannies and I won't be able to make something darker if I want, or change the tone just a little bit. So that could be another reason why it takes me longer. Anyway, back to my pumpkin. You can see that I have worked on building up my color, and it's really starting to come together now. You can see when I add this orange over top, it definitely makes it a warmer color. You can see the shadows and the highlights, but it's still orange. And now I'm going to go over it with this yellow, and it just brightens everything up, but it also kind of blends the colors together a little bit. So you get a lot of those nooks and crannies are filled with color at this point. Here I'm adding some green to the stem. I know we just talked about they'd probably be brown, but anyway, we're going with green. And then for my leaves, I'm going to blend the colors like I've been doing. I always use my color pencil sharpener when I do this. I don't sharpen anything else with that pencil sharpener, just my Prismacolors. I think it's actually a Prismacolor sharpener. I always sharpen them first, and when they start to get dull, I sharpen them again. And I think that's kind of just the general way you use colored pencils. You'll have to let me know if you've had a lot of luck with dull color pencils, because I don't think you have. So here, you might have. I might be, speaking out of turn. Here I'm blending green to yellow to orange, I guess. The leaf would have been green, and the tips are what turn first. So I figured that I would do one like that. Just blended it all with the yellow again. And then I was like, well, my pumpkin needs to be brighter, and this is how color pencil works for me. I just kind of layer and layer and layer, and when I'm kind of happy with it, then I just roll with it. But I think it turned out okay. Like I said, I think this is my favorite card. It's so simple and it's so pretty, and I could give this to somebody and I would be just as proud of it as if I gave somebody a scene card or something that lights up or an interactive card. Or I just was really proud of this. I think especially because it was colored pencil and that's not my go-to, but I would like to get better at it. So let me know also. Prismacolor pencils is what I have. Is there a better pencil that I should be checking into or looking into so I can let Santa know that that's what I want? Just let me know. I would like to work on that a bit more. So here I'm using those luster metallic waxy, things again. And I am blending with my brush. I'm just gonna fade that red out into a circle and then kind of fade it out to white. I just thought that they would be really beautiful behind this image, and I don't think I was wrong. You have to let me know if there was another color that I probably should have used, but this is what I did. And that's a piece of that Nina 80-pound cardstock, like I said, tried to stick to the kit. Here I'm going to stamp the sentiment that's going to go on this one, which was it just thanks, or did I add? Oh no, I added more. Thanks for your friendship or something like that. I thought it was really pretty. I do like the larger thanks with the smaller sub-sentiments. I think that they underline the main sentiment really well. Usually when people get cards, they put them up on their mantle or whatever. From a distance, it would just look like the thanks is underlined, but you can see the nice clear stamping. So this one here, I thought, well, we have this giant stamp set, so let's go all out. So here's another one where I did some masking, and I kind of left all of this in case you decide you want to build a scene with this cornucopia and all of these wonderful things. So I laid down the cornucopia first, and then I laid what I wanted to be in front of the cornucopia. Using my MISTI, I was able to pick up those two stamps and had them positioned properly. So I stamped them out, and this is some more of that Nina, or it might be Nina, I'm not even sure. It's craft cardstock. So then I laid the cornucopia back on so I, could see what I had where, and then I laid the next layer of stamps where I wanted them, which I wanted a couple of these pieces of corn, and I had to, kind of move my stuff around inside my mini MISTI. That's another thing. I only have a mini MISTI. I have other platforms, but do you find that you reach for your mini MISTI more or your bigger one? I'm curious. So here, just adding another corn, and I did mask all of these off screen. And at this point, I did know that masking paper is very, very sticky, so I had them all stuck to my pants while I was waiting to use them because it did help. It did help, especially with this craft cardstock because the fibers are a little looser, which is why colored pencils work so nice in them. But I wanted to make sure it didn't tear. So here I'm just stamping an additional pumpkin, and I did save all the pumpkin masks from that card with all the pumpkins. So I have all those. That's why you'll see all the wonky stamping on top of them. Just kind of lined up the stem and the pumpkin. Some of the coolest cards I've ever seen made were scene cards, and there was a lot of masking. And sometimes when I watch a video, I'm like, how did they get that to be in that position or whatever? So that's why I left all of this part in and didn't just jump to my image already stamped out. So every time I mask an image and I go to lay the next set of stamps, I put that cornucopia back on and lay my stamp on top of the cornucopia that's laid down on my paper. It helps me position things so that I know like where they're going to be placed. And I feel like had I known this trick years ago, I would have probably been making scene cards more often, but I didn't know this trick. So I would be like, well, I don't know where to place things, but you don't have to have ink on that cornucopia to use it to place things. So that stamp is still clean, never been used, and I continue to use it for placement every single time. So here's an apple, and I'm going to place it again, and then I'm going to move, now I'm going to put a pear in, and I will put another apple in there. But use your stamps. You know, you don't have to have ink on them to lay them on your paper. It's okay to use them as a placeholder. I think I actually ended up having to cut a new mask for that because I only had so many masks cut. So there I decided I was going to put another apple in. And here again, I laid the cornucopia, put the apple on top, picked it up with the Misty Door, and stamped it. I didn't have to worry about placement because I knew where my cornucopia was going to lay. Because look at all this stuff that I have here, and I don't even have the cornucopia on the paper yet. And everything will line up fine. So mask the apple off, and now I'm going to stamp the cornucopia because all of this stuff should be pouring out of that. I did stamp it a few times because I have a few layers of masking paper here, and although it is very thin, if you have a couple of layers, you get that edge. And I did try to trim everything kind of on the black line or just inside the black line to kind of eliminate some of this. But it is what it is, and some of the lines aren't perfect, but it's a hand-stamped card. It's homemade. So I did stamp this a few times, just getting it nice and black. And I did leave in the reveal so that you can watch all of this become one cohesive scene. And I was very careful because, like I said, this paper is so sticky and I didn't want it to tear. But I didn't mind it tearing the masks because at this point, I didn't need them anymore. This was card 5, and when I use the stamp set again, I will just make new masks. I'm not even worried about it. So let your masks tear. Don't worry about tearing your mask. You can always make a new one. Try not to tear your project because that sucks. So here you can see the corn is in front of the pumpkin, which is in front of the cornucopia. And this piece of corn here, I don't know. I think I didn't think ahead very much. Maybe it's not exactly the way I wanted it, but it's fine. It's fine. Everything's fine. Here I am peeling off. I think it's the final mask, and I was very, very careful. The final mask, I didn't want to tear anything there because so far we had done well. But to color this with colored pencils, we just discussed, colored pencils take me forever. And I did stamp this on the craft cardstock, so I wanted to do something neat. So I colored it quickly with my Copics. I kind of put an underpainting or a base layer down, and then I'm just going to add additional shading with my colored pencils. I thought, haha, this is fancy. And I figured if you're like me and colored pencils are the struggle, they take forever. It's really hard I guess it's hard for me to practice colored pencils because I don't have tons and tons of time. I have 3 small children at home. I make these videos. I do all sorts of things, momming and wifing and all the things. So I don't always have a ton of time to sit down and color an image with colored pencils. But if I can get a base layer underneath my colored pencils, I can kind of cheat the system. So I tried it, and spoiler alert, it works. It worked well. You can see all of this depth and dimension that I'm getting with my colored pencils added, but I also have tons of dimension in the really quick Copic coloring that I did. Made sure I added the shape into the pears and the apples, and I just went through and added shading, and I feel like this is the cheater win here. So you might see this technique a little more often out of me, practicing with my colored pencils over top of my Copics. I know that people use their colored pencils to shade all sorts of things, watercolor. I mean, I'm sure, well, I think I've done it before, shaded my Copic stuff with colored pencils. I just have never, I guess, done it to this extent. This was a really big image here. Oh, and then I changed the tone here by using this colored pencil. It also allowed me to not like wax out the lines. Usually when you color an image with colored pencils and you use black ink or any color ink, you kind of wax over the lines, and it makes it harder to see the definition. This didn't do that so much because I kind of got the definition with the Copics underneath first, and I don't think that the lines really disappeared too much. It's definitely an interesting way to practice this, and I'll definitely be doing it. I'm not going to show you all the coloring. I just figured I would show a little bit here. I did the same thing for every single fruit. I had colored it with my Copics, and I went over it with a few colored pencils to add some depth and dimension. Once I finished up here with the grapes, then I decided to add a sentiment, and I used the Happy Thanksgiving sentiment that came in the stamp set. Just stamped that in the space that the cornucopia kind of makes there with some VersaFine Onyx Black ink. It fit perfectly. I was really excited. I hadn't planned that out, and I'm glad I didn't. Well, I'm glad it worked because I planned everything else. So here are my 5 cards all finished. I will go through some pictures here of all 5 cards in the order that they were created. I really hope that you check out the Create and Inkspire site. It is an online place for card makers. It's actually really neat. There's private content and all sorts of support. There's a forum, places to share pictures, all sorts of fun stuff, and you get a discount on this kit, 10% off. It's totally worth it. So let me know down below if you need any additional information about Create and Inkspire. I'd also like to know what your favorite card was today. And thank you again for stopping by. And as I always say, give cards generously. Bye.